great ticks. I don't actually know if I performed that last act properly on the back end. There's just some nerves going through, even though I didn't know if I actually got the fifth act. It's another case just like the Tattooed Love Boy's first act on the Nearly Ideal path, where you have to activate over star power phrase. I've had a couple runs in the past that, I got the back end on the fifth act, but I was pretty sure that I didn't know until the run ended that I overlapped. Again, it's just impossible to tell really in the moment because the flame is blue regardless. Not great ticks here by any means, but for the fact that I was just shooting for 291 in general, like, it's really all I was gunning for specifically. I would have liked 291.1 as the bare minimum, but yeah, there were still a lot of ticks dropped in this run. The first act, I think, was just a 30, so it was pretty bad, but I wasn't, again, because I wasn't fighting for ticks, I wasn't pushing it very far. I was just trying to get to the fifth act as many times as possible. I did more task work on this song than I have for many other songs, just because there's a lot of activations that are very on the fence about whether or not you can expand them, and it turns out the majority, well, at least of the close ones, you can. I'll start with the fourth, which is the first that has any expansion. I looked at the path for the fourth act, and just from the way it's set up, where you have that lone, like, isolated blue hammer-on and a bunch of space between the green strum, that just signaled to me that I should try that. And it turns out that is possible, and it's not even that ridiculous. It's a 3-frame window in total, but it does include that red sustain whammy, so it's still really hard, but it's not like unfeasible. It's only a single whammy and it's a 3-frame window, so it's definitely possible, or I should say, like, humanly viable. I'm not sure, I think it's just the upper bound path that starts on the first green, the green strum into the red hammer-on, into the blue hammer-on, that sequence. I tasked that too because I was curious, and that ended up actually being impossible, so another win for the upper bound paths. That activation ended on the final yellow hammer-on, which is the same effect as activating on the blue hammer-on at the beginning. Like, it's just giving you an extra note in, but again, it's impossible even with extended hit window. So yeah, I don't know what, like, Stephen Hawking was doing the math on these upper bound paths, trying to implement, like, imaginary numbers in to fudge the math, but I think really what happens with a lot of these upper bound paths that involve whammy is that they assume that you can whammy on the first frame. The only reason I really even come to that conclusion is because of the cherry pie upper bound path, which that's how you are able to get that single solo phrase, is by whamming on the first possible frame, only in PAL from my testing. So even with that extent, yeah, I don't know really what's going on with these. So anyways, that's the fourth act. The fifth act, I'm honestly kind of surprised nobody has went for this yet. Extended hit window or not, it's a 5-frame leniency. I say 5-frame leniency, it's a 5-frame window, I guess 4-frame leniency. Which means it was possible without extended hit window by a couple frames. So, and it doesn't involve whammy, which is the big thing, because you overflow. So, like I said, the biggest hassle with it, honestly, is the fact that you can't see the front end activation properly. But the back end is very reminiscent of the Bad Reputation back end, so I had some experience specifically with this kind of pull-off sequence. And that leaves the final act, which the upper bound path is actually possible on that, which was kind of surprising. That being said, it is by far the hardest activation to push in this song, not only because it includes the most whammy, but it includes a hammer-on whammy, and then a not only sustain whammies that lead into each other, but chord sustain whammies that lead into each other, and that is a huge distinction for multiple reasons. First of all, just accurately fretting that to get as much whammy as possible is much more difficult than single notes, obviously, and it also offers zero flexibility in your timing window. I discussed this in the Sweet Child of Mine video, but you can actually perform early whammy on singular sustains of a lower fret due to the extended hit window fret glitch that completes the sustain. But with very few exceptions, that does not work with chords. You have to just fret and strum perfectly for chords to get the max amount of whammy out of them. So yeah, and on top of that, the final act is it's technically a 3-frame window for my testing with perfect whammy, but that also involves you letting off the orange sustain early to get that full 3-frame window, which obviously would be worth it. You know, you gain way more points than you throw away on the sustain, but you can do that extended hit window fret trick that I tried to do in this run. I don't know if I actually got it, and that lets you complete the full sustain, but since you have to strum and then do the fret at the very least a frame later, it makes the window at most 2 frames. But given the fact that, you know, it's pretty ridiculous to frame the fret after you strum like that, it more than likely would make it a single frame window for human viability. And yeah, I don't see that really getting pulled off. Again, maybe with dropping the sustain, but with getting the full sustain using that trick, I doubt it. Glad to have pulled this off, but this song still has a lot of room to grow, at least on the 4th act, and clearly with ticks as well.